Hi guys, this is HeyJay Stylexio and welcome to another tutorial. Today we're learning how to make this beautiful off-shoulder gown on the screen with this beautiful spiral flounce, and it's a very simple tutorial. So if you want to learn how to watch it, please stay to the end. The materials we'll be needing are the fabric, we'll be needing the boning, lining also, and then we'll be needing organza, then your pattern paper and rulers to cut. So I'll be drafting the pattern and then showing you what to do. So for the pattern drafting, we'll start with the measurements on the screen. You can see the measurements on the screen, so working with it. And then because it's an off shoulder dress, we're going to be removing 5 inches off the shoulder and then taking every other vertical measurement from there. So for the vertical measurement, we start with the bust measurement, and the bust and the shoulder to nipple is 9 inches. But if you can see the way I place the tape, 5 inches is out, which is serving as the off shoulder, so 9 inches. Then we'll also mark the half length, which is 16, and then we'll also mark the hip measurement, which is 27. Shoulder to hip is 27. Don't forget we off 5 inches, and that's the reason is because it's an off shoulder, so we're assuming that from the shoulder to 5 inches is off because it's an off shoulder. So you could place the tape on your body and then know what part you want to take off from your shoulder measurement, and then we'll take the hem of the gown. The gown length we're working with is 36, so we're going to place all these measurements, then rule the horizontal lines, connect them. So we have the hip line and then the hem of the gown. So the next thing to do is we're going to place the bust measurement, the quarter of the bust measurement. Bust divided by 4. Here we're working with bust of 36 divided by 4 is 9 inches. Then we'll go up by 2 inches. Don't forget to get the chest line. So this is the bust line, the waist, the hip, and then the gown length down. So the chest line, we'll rule it out, the chest line. So on the chest measurement, we'll put the quarter of the bust measurement plus half inch. On the waistline, we'll put the waist measurement, quarter of the waist measurement. That's the waist measurement divided by 4, and then we'll add 1 inch for that allowance. Then we'll go over to the hip line and then place quarter of the hip measurement plus, just the hip measurement, and then we'll go to the hem of the gown. We'll take the hip measurement there, then we reduce 1.5 from that measurement. This is going to serve as the thickness for the down part of the gown. But if you want the gown to be free and straight, well, you can just use the hip measurement on the hem. But because it's a fitted gown, or we'll say pencil gown, we just reduce 1.5 from the hip measurement. So we're going to connect the hip to the hem and then the waist to the hip line, and then we'll connect it to the bust. So when that is done, we just label it front so that we know we're constructing the front pattern. Then now we'll take our dart. So to take the dart, we take half of the nipple point. So from nipple to nipple measurement, you divide it by 2. You mark it. That's what we use in determining the dart on any outfit. Even though you're making a basic block, it's the same thing you use. So we just connect them, the points we marked now. Now on the waistline, we took 1 inch for that allowance. We added 1 inch, so we're going to take it out, which is half on both sides, half inches, and then we're going to connect it to 1 inch below the bust line and 2 inches above the hip line. So for the front of a gown, you connect the dart stops 1 inch above the hip line, while for the back of a gown, the dart stops 2 inches above the hip line. Kindly take note of that. Then we just connect it to the hip line, the darts at 2 inch above the hip line. Then when we're done, we go to the top of the paper where we start our measurement. That is now the upper chest line, so I just labeled it upper chest line. Then I'll take half of the upper chest measurement. If you don't know how to take this measurement, I'll be dropping a link to the video in the description box on how to take the body measurement, so you see where we took as the upper chest. So connect the upper chest measurement to the bust measurement at the chest line, and then get the midpoint of the line, come in by half inch, and then use your curve rule to get the armhole curve of the off shoulder dress. So this is basically how to make an off shoulder. Just curve it in, and that's all. And then for the neck, you can determine what type of neck you want, how deep you want it to be. So for this one, I'll be using 1 inch, and then I'm connecting it with a little curve to the chest line. So this is it. So this is basically the front pattern. So we'll be extending these lines to create the back pattern of the dress. So, well, if you're a new subscriber, welcome to the channel. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so that you can get updates on our any new tutorials we drop. So we're taking the zip allowance, which is 1 inch, because the front and the back is basically the same thing, but the difference is just the zip allowance of 1 inch. And so we'll mark it out first, the 1 inch zipper allowance, before we take every other measurement exactly as we did for the back. So if you're still watching this video, meaning the tutorial is helpful, please don't forget to drop your comments, and also don't forget to share with your soulmates. So we'll just take the same measurements we took at the front, which is the bust measurement divided by 4 plus half inch. We'll mark it out on the chest line. Don't forget, this is the chest line. So we already labeled it when we're doing the front pattern. Then we'll take half of the quarter of the waist measurement. That's the waist measurement divided by 4. We'll take it, and then we'll add our 1 inch for that. Then we'll take the hip measurement divided by 4. Take note, we're taking this measurement after the zip allowance, not in front of the zip or behind the zip allowance. And then we'll take the hem. At the hem, we'll take the hip measurement divided by 4 minus 1.5, and then we'll connect these points together to form the shape of our dress. Exactly what we did in the front is what we're doing in the back, but the difference is just the zipper allowance that we added. So we're connecting the waist now to the chest, and then we take the upper chest measurements, which is the same 12 inches. Then we'll connect it to the bust. We'll get the midpoint and then draw a curve. So you could just use an armhole curve like this to just draw your curve. It's fine if you have an armhole curve. But if you don't have a curve, then you can get the midpoint of the line and then draw. So on the waistline here, we're going to mark that. So mark half of the nipple to nipple distance, then connect it. So we said the difference between the front and back dart is the length of the dart. So for the length of the front dart, the dart stops 2 inches above the hip line, while for the front dart it stops 1 inch above the hip line. So the back dart stops 1 inch above the hip line, while the front dart stops 2 inches above the hip line. So the back dart is always longer than the front dart, while for the upper part, you just connect the dart straight to the chest line or the bust line. You don't need to come down by 1 inch. So just connect it. Now there's something called bulging in dress, when you see the back bulging out. So we're going to be removing this bulge from the waistline. So the bulge we're going to remove it by half inch, just to get a perfectly fitted dress. So from the waistline and on the zipper part, you just come in by half inch, then connect back straight to the line up, and then same thing downwards. Now from this line, now mark your zipper allowance of 1 inch, thereby eliminating any bulge. So connect it up and connect it down. So this is the zipper allowance. I'll just label it zipper allowance. So this is it, and then now we'll add all our seam allowance around it. For the neck, I'm coming down by 2 inches at the back neck, and then we'll connect it to the chest point there where it meets the armhole. So you choose now how many inch you need for your seam allowance. Here I'll be adding 1.5 round as the seam allowance on the sides, and then for the hem I'll be adding 1.5 as well for the hem allowance, because the lining we'll be using will be to be shorter. I want it situation whereby the fabric folds inwards into the lining, so we'll be reducing the allowance on the lining parts. So we're going to be adding whatever allowance we need, the reduction, we're going to be adding it to the main fabric. So on our pattern, we're adding it, which is about 1.5. And so we're going to add it to the hem now, 1.5 inch for hemming allowance to turn the lining. And then we'll connect it to the straight line. Then we'll also do the same thing for the armhole and then the neckline. So connect the armhole. For the armhole we need half inch to connect if you're going to be adding a sleeve, but in this style we're not adding a sleeve. But if you're adding a sleeve, you also need the half inch to join your sleeve. If you're not adding a sleeve and then you're just doing this style, you also need that half inch to turn with your lining. There on the neck also you connect half inch as well to turn with your lining or to join with the flounce. So this is basically it, and then you add the same allowance to the back pattern. So I'm going to cut this out now on fabric. So now I've cut it on fabric, both on the lining and on the main fabric. So while I was cutting, I didn't know that my camera was in position where, so it didn't really record. So that part now is behind camera, and when you're cutting the front, make sure it's on fold. Then for the back part is opened because of the zipper allowance. You do the same thing on the main fabric and on the lining. And then also for the length of the lining, it is shorter. With that 1.5, we added that seam allowance for the main fabric. We reduced it from the lining, so it's shorter so that it can fold inwards like so. So we're going to take it to the sewing machine now. Place fabric and sew the darts first on the lining on the main fabric, and then both for the front and the back, the darts on both sides. We'll mark it out and then we'll sew it on the lining as well. Now we're done sewing the dart. You can see it. We've also sewn it on the lining. So we're going to place the lining now on the main fabric, right side facing each other on the hem, and then we're going to join it with half inch in the sewing machine. So we're going to sew it from end to end with half inch. Then when I'm done sewing, I'll tell you what to do. So now I want to sew it. Just place it like so. With half inch, you sew from top to down. So when you're done sewing, because the lengths are different, we drag it up now to meet the neck. So we're dragging the lining up to meet the neck of the main fabric, just like this, with right side facing each other. So we're going to sew around the armhole and sew the sides with quarter of an inch, not even up to half inch, just to turn the sides, and then we'll open it up from the neck. So now I've done that. I'm going to do that also on the back pattern as well. Please take note of that. So now I've done that. I've also ironed it. I've sewn the front and then the back, leaving only the neck open. So now I'm going to place them together, the back side. I'm going to close it and then fix the zip. So I'm going to be showing you how to fix the zip. So from the neck, we marked half inch. Then I'm going to mark the hip line where I'm going to be stopping my zip. My zip is going to be stopping 2 inches above the hip line, and I'm going to mark the zipper allowance. Zipper allowance we took is 1 inch. So I'm going to sew the 1 inch from top, from the part where the zip is stopping to the down of the dress. Then now I have only the part I'm adding zip opened. So I'm going to just place my zip like this. So if you don't know how to fix a zip, just watch this tutorial carefully. So I place the zip on the fabric just like this, on the zipper allowance you left. But for this one, I'm not starting from the top of the fabric. I'm starting from that half inch mark I made. Why? Because we're going to be turning the hem later, so the zip won't stop from the top, so not to cause any inconveniences while turning. So I'm just going to mark the half inch again so that I will know where we're starting. So the zip stopper, that metal stopper, is where we're placing on the half inch, and then we're going to use our pin to secure it in place. Then we sew it from the down of the zip to the top of the zip, just close to the zip foot, and then make sure the zip foot lies on the zipper head, the zipper teeth, whatever you call it, but I call it zipper teeth. I don't know what you call it. Let me know in the comment section what you call the zipper teeth. Okay, I still call it zipper teeth. So you just open it up and continue sewing to the end. And then we'll do the same thing for the second side of the zip. So basically this is how to sew a zip. And I also have a detailed tutorial on how to fix a zip. In case you still want more details, I have a tutorial on that in the channel. So now the zip is fixed. You just take it to the pressing iron it, then you place the front side on the back side like so, and then we're going to sew it now with the sewing allowance we left. So we left 1.5 already. We used half inch to turn the line, so we have 1 inch left on both sides. We're going to sew both sides from top to down. So now we're trying to cut the flay that I'll be using now to finish up the dress. And please, when you're making this, use 5 yards of organza. Whether you're using organza or net, use 5 yards to get a fuller effect. I'm using 2 yards. I'm going to be cutting just 2 circles, and I'm doing this for the sake of the tutorial. So for the circumference of a circle, the formula is 2 pi arrow, and pi is normally 3.14. So well, if you don't know that part in maths, please, you need it here. You cannot run away from that. Well, so we're going to be dividing the round shoulder circumference by 6.28. So I'll press it on my calculator now. 38.75, which is the round shoulder circumference. And to get 38.75, the round shoulder circumference, you need to place the tape around the shoulder, and there's a tutorial on the channel on how to get that. So I'm just going to place my fabric on fold like this, then place the radius that I got. 38.75 divided by 6.28 gives you 6.1. So I'm going to mark 6.1 round. Now I'm going to mark the length of the flay. The length of the flay I'm working with is about 20 inches. So I'm going to mark it total. Why 20 inches? I'm actually working with length of 14, but I added that 6.1 to it to get the full length from the edge. So I've just cut it out now, and I'm going to place it on the fabric to cut the other one. So I don't need to fold into 4 again. I'll just place it like this and then cut the second circle. But this time I want the second circle to be smaller, so I'm going to place it. Just watch the way I'm going to place it now. I'm bringing out, you can see the edge of the circle. I'm bringing it out by 2 inches, so that by the time I cut the new circle to be shorter with 2 inches. So this is another easy way to cut multiple circles. And if you want to cut more, just pull it out from the folded material and then cut. So basically this is how to cut multiple circles. For your first circle, you can fold by 4, but for others, you just fold into 2, place on the folded fabric. So I've cut it on one side open, and this is it. So I'm going to be sewing the boning on the open edge of the circle. That is the part, the wider part down, not the part where we cut the radius, the other down part. That's where I'm going to be sewing it. And I'm using a bias tape to cover the boning to prevent it from showing, because you know the boning is white. So if you have access to a black boning and you're using a black fabric like this, where you don't need to cover it, or if you're using satin or a thicker fabric that will cover your boning, you don't need to work with your bias tape. But because the fabric we're working with is very light, so we're using the bias to cover it. So we just place the bias underneath the boning and place it on top of the fabric, and then we just sew on the side, which is on top of the organza, and then you sew on the sides, just on the side of the boning where it's not perforated. We're using the regular boning, which is the sewable boning. If you use your plastic boning, it's going to break your needle because you cannot sew on it. So we just sew on the side like that from the beginning to the end. When I'm done sewing, I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to sew it now behind camera and show you what it looks like. So now I'm done sewing. This is it. It's already coming out fine. You can see the spiral effect already showing. So I'm going to now use the bias to flip it over to the other side. Just use the bias now to turn it to cover the boning, and then just sew on it. So I'm still going to sew it like that till the end, and I'll show you what it looks like. So this is it. I'm done sewing. This is it. It's already coming out very beautiful. So I'm going to get my needle and thread, and my thread, I'm going to be using the round shoulder measurement for the thread, and I'm going to gather the radius part of the flare, that is the other open part that we did not sew. I'm going to gather it with the thread so that I can attach it, and you're placing the two flare on each other, and you're gathering both. So I'm going to gather it so that I can place it on the dress. I'm going to show you how to place it. So now that I've gathered it behind camera, this is it. It's already coming out so fine. Imagine having this in multiple layers. Wow, like it would have been so beautiful. But for the sake of the tutorial, we're just managing 2 yards, like I said. So you just get the midpoint of the neck, because I'm going to be placing it now. This is the wrong side. You're going to place it from the wrong side, not the other way around. So we're going to get the, first of all, measure the neck of the um, dress, and that is the chest of the dress, and the chest is 13 inches here. The back as well, we zip it and also measure the back, which is also 13 inches as well, just to confirm it's 13 inches. So meaning that the back and the front is 13 inches, and 13 plus 13 is 26. So the remaining, and the round shoulder is 38.75. So we count what is left. So what is left is about 11 points. So that meaning that divided by 2, one part, 5.1, 5 points is going to be on one sleeve, and then the other side is going to be on the other sleeve. I'm sure you understand what I mean. What it means is, if the front chest is 13 inches, the back chest is 13 inches, meaning the front and back chest, 13 plus 13 is 26, and the total length of this fillet is 38. So you just subtract 38 from, subtract 26 from 38.75. It will tell you what is left for the sleeve part. So that's how to also get your sleeve when maybe you're making an off-shoulder dress as well. So we're going to just notch now the midpoint of the fillet, and we're going to place it on the midpoint also of the front part of the dress. You just get the midpoint of the front part of the dress. You can notch if you want. Then we're placing the organza from the back, which is the part where we have the lining. We're placing the organza from the back. So we're going to place it and then pin it round. So we'll pin from the middle to the side, to both sides of the back, of the front. Then we leave the back, the armhole, sorry, we leave the armhole, and then we pin from the back. So whatever is left is going to serve as the sleeve of the dress. So we'll go to the back, start from the end of the organza, and then pin from the back to the armhole. Start from this other end, and then pin from the back to the armhole. I'm sure you understand this. So we'll just take it to the sewing machine and join it by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to sew it behind camera and then show you what it looks like. So now I'm done sewing it. It's already coming out so fine. It's really beautiful. You can see it. So by the time you flip it over, the sewing allowance now is hidden under the organza. So that's why we had to sew it from the top like that. So it's hidden under the organza. So the sleeve part, we just fold it in and then run a stitch on top, and then the sides of the organza as well, we're going to sew it, fold it by 1 inch. We left 1 inch sewing allowance, so fold by half first, and we're picking the two organza together, the two fillet. So fold by half and then we'll fold by the other half. But if you have multiple fillet, like maybe you're cutting like 5-6 fillet, you can fold individually. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is my model, one of my students wearing it, and this is what it looks like. If imagine having multiple layers of this, like 4, 5, it would have really been fuller and finer. Well, this is it, and it's a very simple tutorial, right? Well, leave me a message in the comment section. Tell me what you think about it.